In the bustling college town of Riverside Heights, when the notorious Shadow Riders motorcycle gang decided to mock an overweight student at the Silver Bean Café, they had no idea they were about to get a life-changing lesson from Marcus "Big Mac" Chen, a national karate champion whose response would reshape not just the gang, but the entire community. Before we dive into today's story, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and if you enjoy stories of justice being served, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got another incredible tale waiting for you tomorrow. Now let's begin. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Silver Bean Café, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors that had supported countless students through their caffeine-fueled study sessions. Located just off the main campus of Riverside Heights University, the café had long served as a sanctuary for students seeking refuge in a warm cup of coffee and a quiet corner to study. Marcus Chen guided his large frame carefully between the tables, his movements deliberate and graceful despite his size. At 280 pounds, he'd grown accustomed to the sideways glances and whispered comments that followed him across campus. His laptop bag was slung across one shoulder, heavy with the advanced programming textbooks that had earned him top marks in the computer science department. The familiar scent of freshly ground coffee beans and warm pastries filled the air, as Sarah Martinez, the cafe's owner, greeted him with a genuine smile. "The usual, Marcus?" she called out, already reaching for his favorite oversized mug. The morning crowd was typical. Professor Williams grading papers in the corner, a group of nursing students huddled over their anatomy flashcards, and a few regulars whose faces Marcus had known since his freshman year. "Thanks, Sarah," Marcus nodded, settling into his usual spot by the window. His fingers, surprisingly nimble for their size, pulled out his laptop and began typing, the sound blending with the gentle hum of coffee grinders and quiet conversation. Few who saw him would have guessed that these same hands had shattered concrete blocks in demonstrations across the country, or that beneath his loose-fitting university sweatshirt lay muscles hardened by 20 years of rigorous training. The peaceful morning atmosphere shattered with the distinctive rumble of approaching motorcycles. The sound grew louder, more intrusive, until it filled the small cafe with its threatening echo. 5 bikes pulled into the parking lot, chrome gleaming under the morning sun. The Shadow Riders had arrived. The nursing students tensed visibly, gathering their materials closer. Professor Williams looked up from his grading, his hand instinctively moving to his phone. The Shadow Riders had been making their presence increasingly felt around campus over the past months, their intimidation tactics growing bolder with each passing week. The leader, Jake "Razor" Thompson, dismounted first, his leather vest adorned with patches that spoke of violence and intimidation. The Shadow Riders emblem, a grinning skull wrapped in chains, dominated his back. The other 4 riders spread out in a practiced formation that spoke of calculated menace. Marcus continued typing, his expression unchanged. He'd faced far more intimidating opponents on the tournament circuit, seen real pressure in the eyes of champions fighting for international titles. These men, for all their posturing, were playing at being dangerous. The bell above the door chimed as Razor pushed through, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. His eyes swept the room, a predatory smile spreading across his face as they landed on Marcus. "Well, well," Razor announced, his voice carrying an edge of mockery. "Looks like we found where they're hiding the campus whale." Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she set down a coffee pot. "Please," she began, "this is a peaceful place." "Peaceful?" One of the riders, a tall man with a cobra tattooed on his neck, moved closer to Marcus's table. "We're peaceful. Just making conversation with our big friend here. Real big friend." Marcus's fingers continued their steady rhythm on the keyboard, his focus apparently unbroken. The cafe had fallen silent, tension crackling in the air like static before a storm. Through the window's reflection, he could see 2 more Shadow Riders positioning themselves near the door. "You deaf as well as fat, boy?" Razor leaned over Marcus's table, deliberately blocking his view of the screen. "When someone talks to you, it's polite to answer." Marcus saved his work with a practiced keystroke, his movements unhurried despite the mounting tension. "My hearing's fine," he replied evenly, his voice carrying a quiet confidence that seemed to catch Razor off guard. "Though I prefer conversations that start with good morning." A sharp laugh cut through the silence. "Good morning?" "Sure, let's be polite." Razor's hand shot out, slamming Marcus's laptop closed. "Good morning, fatty. Me and my friends were just wondering, how many seats you gotta pay for on the bus?" The nursing students had begun quietly gathering their things, trying to make their way toward the door without drawing attention. Professor Williams was speaking softly into his phone, his eyes never leaving the scene unfolding before him. Marcus slowly pulled his laptop away from Razor's hand, his movements controlled, precise. Years of martial arts training had taught him that true strength lay not in reacting to provocation, but in choosing one's response with wisdom and purpose. "One seat," Marcus replied calmly, "though I'd be happy to demonstrate my efficient use of space if you're genuinely interested in transportation logistics." The subtle trace of defiance in his voice caused Razor's face to darken. The biker leaned in closer, his breath carrying the stale scent of cigarettes. "You got a smart mouth for such a big target. Maybe we need to teach you some respect." As if on cue, the remaining riders began moving closer, forming a loose circle around Marcus's table. The morning sun caught their various patches and pins, brass knuckles, switchblades, emblems of violence that had struck fear into the heart of Riverside Heights student community for months. What happened next would be talked about in the Silver Bean Café for years to come. It would mark the beginning of a transformation that would touch not just the Shadow Riders, but the entire fabric of Riverside Heights itself. But in that moment, as Marcus Chen calmly reached for his phone, none of them could have predicted how this seemingly simple act of harassment would cascade into something far more profound. Marcus's fingers moved deliberately across his phone screen, each tap measured and precise. "Making a call at a time like this?" Cobra Neck Tattoo sneered, taking another threatening step forward. "Who you gonna call for help, big boy?" "Just reaching out to some friends," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the same calm confidence that had guided him through 100 tournament finals. The phone connected, and his tone shifted subtly, taking on the authority that had commanded dojos across 3 continents. "Master Wong?" "Yes, Silver Bean Café, and yes, bring everyone." The words hung in the air like smoke, and for a moment the only sound was the gentle hum of the cafe's espresso machine. Then Razor's face twisted into something ugly, something that had terrorized students across campus for months. "You just made a big mistake, Tubby," he growled, his fingers curling into fists. "Nobody calls for backup in our territory." Marcus's reply was quiet but carried to every corner of the suddenly silent cafe. "First mistake, assuming I need backup. Second mistake, thinking this is your territory." The distant sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, more organized, filling the street outside the Silver Bean with a rhythm that made the Shadow Riders exchange uneasy glances. Through the cafe windows, the first figures appeared. They moved with disciplined grace, their white G's crisp in the morning sun. Master David Wong led the group, his silver hair and weathered black belt speaking of decades of dedication. Behind him, row after row of martial artists emerged, each moving with practiced coordination. Within minutes, over 40 karate practitioners had surrounded the Silver Bean Café. Razor's confident sneer faltered slightly as he watched the display through the window. "What kind of circus is this supposed to be?" Marcus remained seated, his posture relaxed yet ready. "No circus. Just introducing you to my morning class." The bell above the door chimed as Master Wong entered, removing his glasses with deliberate care. His eyes, hardened from years of competition and teaching, took in the scene before him. 2 more black belts followed him inside, their movements casual but prepared. "Morning, Marcus," Wong said, his voice carrying the same authority that had trained champions for 3 decades. "These gentlemen giving you trouble?" Before Marcus could respond, Razor stepped forward, trying to maintain control of the situation. "This is Shadow Rider business. Your little pajama parade doesn't change that." Wong turned slowly to face Razor, and something in his expression made the younger man take an involuntary step back. "Business?" Let me tell you something about business. See these people outside? Each one of them has trained under Chen. The man you're trying to intimidate? He's won more national championships than you've probably picked fights. Sarah moved away from the counter, her confidence returning with each martial artist who entered her shop. Professor Williams sat straighter, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he recognized several of the practitioners as fellow faculty members. "You don't know who you're dealing with," Cobra Neck growled, though his voice carried less conviction now. "No," Wong corrected. "You don't know who you're dealing with. That man you're trying to mock? He teaches advanced self-defense to law enforcement, trains special forces in close combat, carried our dojo to international recognition when everyone said someone his size couldn't compete at that level." Marcus raised his hand slightly. "That's ancient history, Master Wong." "Not to us," Wong replied, then addressed Razor directly. "You want to know about respect? Real respect? Look at this man. Each belt, each title, each student he's trained, they represent dedication, discipline, honor. That's how you earn respect, not by terrorizing coffee shops." The other martial artists had begun filing in, filling the space with their presence. They didn't make threats, didn't posture or intimidate. They simply stood, their collective strength evident in their quiet confidence. The morning sun streaming through the windows illuminated a sea of black belts, each representing years of dedicated training. Razor looked around the cafe, seeing for the first time what real power looked like. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, perhaps, or even shame. The swagger that had terrorized students began to crumble in the face of genuine strength. "Last chance," Marcus spoke softly. "You can either learn something here today, or you can make a mistake you'll regret. Your choice." The cafe fell silent, tension crackling in the air. Outside, more martial artists continued to arrive, their disciplined ranks filling the street. Several students had gathered to watch, drawn by the unprecedented display. The Shadow Riders, their earlier bravado replaced by careful calculation, began backing toward the door. "This isn't over," Razor declared, but his voice lacked its previous menace. "No," Marcus agreed calmly. "It's not. But maybe we're ready to start something different." Through the cafe windows, the Shadow Riders mounted their bikes, their earlier aggression replaced by uncertain glances and muted conversations. Master Wong turned to Marcus with a slight smile. "Just like old tournaments. Remember Shanghai?" Marcus shook his head, reaching for his coffee cup. "Not quite, Master Wong. In Shanghai, we were facing champions who understood respect. Today, maybe we can teach that lesson to those who've forgotten it." As the rumble of motorcycles faded into the distance, the cafe's regular customers began emerging from behind tables and counters. They gathered in small groups, watching the martial artists with a mixture of awe and growing hope. Sarah approached Marcus's table, coffee pot in hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Marcus Chen," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "All this time and you never told us. 3 years of serving you coffee, watching you study for hours, and we never knew." "Some strengths don't need announcing, Sarah," Marcus replied, adjusting his laptop screen. "They need living." Master Wong pulled up a chair, his expression turning serious. "They'll be back. Their type always comes back, too much pride to let it go." "I'm counting on it," Marcus said, his eyes distant with tactical consideration. He'd seen that look in Razor's eyes, not just anger, but something deeper. Recognition. These guys, they're not evil. They're lost, looking for something to belong to, something to believe in. "You're not thinking what I think you're thinking," Master Wong said, recognition dawning in his eyes. Marcus's smile was slight but determined. "Every person needs a path worth walking, Master. Maybe it's time we showed them one." Outside, the martial artists began organizing themselves into patrols, their presence bringing a new sense of security to the streets around campus. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge wouldn't be fought with displays of force or intimidation. It would be fought in the hearts and minds of men like Razor, who had forgotten the difference between fear and respect. At the Shadow Rider's garage on the outskirts of town, Razor paced across the oil-stained concrete floor, his boots echoing in the tense silence. The afternoon sun filtered through dusty windows, illuminating the faces of his gang members as they watched their leader struggle with wounded pride. "One fat college kid," Razor snarled, kicking an empty beer can across the floor. "One fat kid and we just walked away." Mike, the snake. Davidson, his second in command, leaned against his bike, trying to maintain a calm facade. "Those weren't just any martial artists, boss. National champions, instructors, different from the usual people we deal with." Razor spun around, his face twisted with rage. "You think I don't know that? You think I can't see what this does to our reputation? Every student, every shop we've got paying protection, they're all going to hear about this." The garage door creaked open, and Cobra entered, his expression grim. "It's already spreading. Campus is buzzing about it. Those karate guys, they're setting up patrols, talking to students. Some of our clients are already asking questions." "Questions?" Razor's voice dropped dangerously low. "About our protection arrangements. The computer science department, they're talking about stopping payments. Says if Chen can stand up to us." A beer bottle shattered against the wall, cutting off Cobra's words. Razor's chest heaved with barely contained fury. "That fat boy doesn't know what he started. By the time we're done, no one at Riverside Heights will dare speak his name." Meanwhile, at the newly established martial arts command post, a converted student center on campus, Marcus sat studying a map of the university with Master Wong and campus security officer Jackson. Red pins marked known Shadow Rider locations, blue ones indicated patrol routes. The transformation had begun, but the true test of strength was still to come. And in the growing dusk, both sides prepared for a battle that would decide not just the fate of a campus, but the very meaning of power itself. "They've got protection rackets running across most campus buildings," Officer Jackson explained, his finger tracing patterns across the map. "Been building their operation for months. Security's been unable to prove anything. Students won't talk." Marcus nodded slowly, his tactical mind analyzing the situation. Fear's their weapon, but it's also their weakness. Show people they don't have to be afraid. The whole system collapses. "Already happening," Master Wong added, sliding a notebook across the table. "Got reports from 15 department heads ready to testify about the protection schemes. Just needed someone to take the first stand." Emily Chen, Marcus's younger sister and a medical student at Riverside Heights, entered with fresh coffee and a concerned expression. As a volunteer at the campus clinic, she'd seen firsthand the results of the Shadow Rider's brand of justice. "Marcus, are you sure about this? These men, they're not going to just give up their power. They'll strike back." Marcus's eyes met hers with quiet confidence. "Of course they will, Em. That's exactly what we're counting on." "He's right," Master Wong interjected. "Right now they're angry, off balance. When people like that lose control, they make mistakes." Outside, martial artists patrolled the campus grounds in pairs, their presence bringing a new sense of security. Students who had kept their heads down for months now walked openly, exchanging greetings with passers-by. The atmosphere was changing, fear giving way to cautious hope. At the Silver Bean Café, now protected by 2 senior black belts who'd competed internationally, Professor Williams addressed a gathering of faculty members. "For months we've been paying them to protect us from themselves," he declared, his voice gaining strength. "Marcus showed us there's another way. We don't have to live like this anymore." The meeting was interrupted by the roar of a motorcycle. A lone Shadow Rider pulled up outside, but instead of the usual intimidation, he seemed uncertain, almost nervous. Sarah recognized him as Tommy Martinez, a local kid who'd joined the gang 6 months ago. "Tommy," she called out, stepping onto the sidewalk. "Want some coffee? On the house? Like old times?" The young rider's eyes darted between Sarah and the martial artists, conflict clear on his face. I can't. Razor isn't here," Sarah replied gently. "But we are. Always have been." Back at the command post, Marcus watched the scene unfold through the window. "You see that, Master? Not all of them are lost. Some just needed to be shown another path." The radio crackled with a report from a patrol unit. Movement at the garage, multiple bikes heading out. Looks like they're mobilizing. Marcus's expression remained calm, but his mind was already calculating moves and counter-moves. And so it begins. Time to see what kind of men they really are. "You think they can change?" Officer Jackson asked, checking his radio. "Everyone can change," Marcus replied, adjusting his laptop screen. "The question is, are they brave enough to try?" "They've got protection rackets running across most campus buildings," Officer Jackson explained, his finger tracing patterns across the map. "Been building their operation for months. Security's been unable to prove anything. Students won't talk." Marcus nodded slowly, his tactical mind analyzing the situation. "Fear's their weapon, but it's also their weakness. Show people they don't have to be afraid, the whole system collapses." "Already happening," Master Wong added, sliding a notebook across the table. "Got reports from 15 department heads ready to testify about the protection schemes. Just needed someone to take the first stand." Emily Chen, Marcus's younger sister and a medical student at Riverside Heights, entered with fresh coffee and a concerned expression. As a volunteer at the campus clinic, she'd seen firsthand the results of the Shadow Riders' brand of justice. "Marcus, are you sure about this? These men, they're not going to just give up their power. They'll strike back." Marcus's eyes met hers with quiet confidence. "Of course they will, Em. That's exactly what we're counting on." "He's right," Master Wong interjected. "Right now they're angry, off balance. When people like that lose control, they make mistakes." Outside, martial artists patrolled the campus grounds in pairs, their presence bringing a new sense of security. Students who had kept their heads down for months now walked openly, exchanging greetings with passers-by. The atmosphere was changing, fear giving way to cautious hope. At the Silver Bean Café, now protected by 2 senior black belts who'd competed internationally, Professor Williams addressed a gathering of faculty members. "For months we've been paying them to protect us from themselves," he declared, his voice gaining strength. "Marcus showed us there's another way. We don't have to live like this anymore." The meeting was interrupted by the roar of a motorcycle. A lone Shadow Rider pulled up outside, but instead of the usual intimidation, he seemed uncertain, almost nervous. Sarah recognized him as Tommy Martinez, a local kid who'd joined the gang 6 months ago. "Tommy," she called out, stepping onto the sidewalk. "Want some coffee? On the house, like old times?" The young rider's eyes darted between Sarah and the martial artists, conflict clear on his face. I can't. Razor isn't here," Sarah replied gently. "But we are. Always have been." Back at the command post, Marcus watched the scene unfold through the window. "You see that, Master? Not all of them are lost. Some just needed to be shown another path." The radio crackled with a report from a patrol unit. "Movement at the garage, multiple bikes heading out. Looks like they're mobilizing." Marcus's expression remained calm, but his mind was already calculating moves and counter-moves. And so it begins. Time to see what kind of men they really are. "You think they can change?" Officer Jackson asked, checking his radio. "Everyone can change," Marcus replied, adjusting his laptop screen. "The question is, are they brave enough to try?" As noon approached, the thunder of motorcycles filled the campus air. Marcus stood at the center of the converted student union, now transformed into a testament of true strength. Massive screens displayed live footage of martial arts classes teaching children, community outreach programs, and security teams protecting students. Razor led the charge, his Shadow Riders reinforced by members of allied gangs, their bikes forming an intimidating convoy that stretched down University Avenue. But instead of finding scared students and empty streets, they encountered something unprecedented. Hundreds of students and faculty members stood their ground, lined up in disciplined rows. In the front, martial artists from every discipline, karate, judo, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, stood in their respective uniforms. Behind them, students wearing academic achievement pins and honor society sashes. The message was clear. Strength comes in many forms. "What's this supposed to be?" Razor called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet street. "Some kind of martial arts parade?" Marcus stepped forward, his movements measured and controlled. His black belt, worn over his regular clothes, caught the midday sun. "Welcome to Riverside Heights, Razor. Though I believe you already know what this place is about." "Yeah," Razor sneered, dismounting his bike. "About to be about teaching fat boys to stay in their lane." "That's where you're wrong." Master Wong stepped forward. "Marcus, show them." Marcus nodded, removing his loose-fitting university sweatshirt. The crowd of bikers shifted uncomfortably. Beneath the casual clothing was a physique sculpted by decades of martial arts training. Every extra pound was matched by pure muscle, built through thousands of hours of dedicated practice. "Surprised?" Marcus asked calmly. "Size doesn't determine strength. Just like leather and patches don't determine respect." Through the crowd, Tommy pushed forward, now wearing his volunteer badge. "Razor, listen to them. I've seen what they're building here. It's what we always said we wanted. Respect, brotherhood, purpose." "Shut up, traitor!" Cobra spat, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Marcus moved with deliberate grace, stepping onto a raised platform. "Each of you has a choice to make today. Not about fighting, about who you want to be." He gestured to the screens behind him. "Look around. While you've been intimidating students, we've been protecting them. While you've been demanding respect, we've been earning it." The screens showed footage of martial arts students helping elderly residents with groceries, former gang members now working as peer counselors, security teams escorting nervous students across campus at night. Real strength in action. "Some of you used to train," Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "Remember your first dojo? Remember the pride you felt earning each belt? That feeling wasn't about being able to hurt people. It was about becoming someone worthy of respect." Several bikers shifted uncomfortably, their hands unconsciously touching spots where colored belts had once rested. Among them, Marcus recognized former tournament competitors, people who'd once bowed with honor before matches. "Your choice isn't about winning or losing today," Marcus declared. "It's about deciding which path leads to real strength. Look at Tommy. He chose to help others instead of intimidating them. Look at these students. They chose to stand together instead of staying afraid." Razor's face contorted with rage, but even he couldn't help glancing at the screens, seeing the impact of Marcus's approach. "You think pretty pictures and fancy words change anything? We're still taking this campus." "No," came a new voice. Mike, the Snake Davidson, Razor's second-in-command, stepped forward, removing his Shadow Rider's patch. "We're not." The crowd watched in stunned silence as the Snake walked across the divide. "I used to compete in regionals," he announced. "Had a brown belt before I thought being feared was better than being respected. I was wrong." His action triggered a cascade. One by one, riders began cutting their engines, some removing their patches, others simply sitting in contemplation. The transformation wasn't universal. Some gripped their handlebars tighter, their faces dark with anger. But the shift was undeniable. "Last chance, Razor," Marcus offered. "There's a path back to honor, back to real strength. The choice is yours." Razor looked around, seeing his force dissolving, seeing the evidence of real power displayed on the screens, seeing the quiet confidence in Marcus's stance. His hand gripped his bike's throttle, knuckles white with tension. "This isn't over," he snarled, but his voice carried more uncertainty than menace. "No," Marcus agreed. "It's not. But what happens next is up to you. Real strength isn't about what you can destroy. It's about what you can build. We'll be here when you're ready to learn that lesson." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across campus as Razor and his remaining loyal followers roared away. But they left behind more than half their numbers, men and women who had chosen to seek a different kind of strength, a different kind of respect. The battle was over, but the real transformation was just beginning. And in that moment of choice, Riverside Heights took its first steps toward becoming something new, a community where true strength would be measured not by fear, but by the courage to change. The morning after the confrontation, the Silver Bean Café hummed with a different kind of energy. Students who had once huddled in corners now sat openly at tables, their conversations animated and free. Marcus sat at his usual spot, but now students regularly approached him, some curious about martial arts, others simply wanting to thank him. Sarah worked the counter with a new lightness in her step, watching as former shadow riders, still in their leather vests but with new volunteer badges, helped carry textbooks for a group of freshman students. The transformation had begun, but it was still delicate, like a seedling pushing through spring soil. "You should have seen it," Tommy told a gathered group, his eyes bright with purpose. "We spent the whole evening cleaning up the garage, turning it into something different, something better." Mike, the Snake Davidson, now wearing both his reclaimed brown belt and a campus security auxiliary badge, nodded in agreement. "Found my old trophies in storage. Can't believe I ever thought intimidation was stronger than this." Marcus watched the interactions with quiet satisfaction, noting how the former riders naturally fell into protective roles. Their instinct to control territory had transformed into a desire to safeguard it. The skills they'd used for intimidation were being redirected toward security and support. "Got something to show you," Emily announced, approaching with a stack of papers. "Remember those departments that were paying protection money? They're donating those same funds to start a new program, martial arts scholarships for at-risk youth." Master Wong joined them, his expression thoughtful. "The transformation's spreading faster than we expected. Got calls from 3 other colleges this morning. They're having similar problems with bike gangs. Want to know how we did it?" "We didn't do anything," Marcus replied, taking a sip of his coffee. "We just showed them a better way to be strong." Through the cafe windows, they could see more changes taking shape. Former shadow riders, now working with campus security, helped direct morning traffic. Others had taken up positions as informal campus guides, their intimate knowledge of the grounds now used to help rather than harm. "It's not just about stopping the intimidation," Officer Jackson observed, reviewing the latest security reports. "They're actively preventing other gangs from moving in, using their connections to protect rather than threaten." The bell above the door chimed as Jennifer Lynn entered, followed by a group of former riders in white GIs. "First morning class went better than expected," she reported. "They already understand discipline and dedication. Just needed to redirect it." Tommy, who had been organizing the garage's transformation, shared his own updates. "Converting the back area into a training space. Some of the guys who still ride with Razor have been driving by, watching. I can see it in their eyes. They're starting to question things." Marcus nodded, understanding the process. Change isn't instant. It grows person by person, choice by choice. Each one who turns around becomes proof for the next that it's possible. Sarah approached their table, refilling coffee cups. "You know what the biggest difference is? The way people look at them now. Not with fear, but with gratitude. I saw Mike helping an elderly professor with his car this morning. The smile they shared. You can't fake that kind of connection." The morning progressed as more stories of transformation emerged. A group of former riders had started a motorcycle escort service for late-night study groups. Others were using their mechanical skills to offer free bike and car maintenance workshops for students. "Got something else to show you," Emily said, pulling up a social media feed on her tablet. "Remember how students used to post warnings about shadow rider sightings? Look at the newest hashtag, #Campus Guardians. They're posting thank you messages, sharing stories of being helped." Through the windows, they could see more leather-clad figures arriving. But these weren't members of Razor's remaining crew. They were riders from other campuses drawn by word of what was happening at Riverside Heights. "The question isn't just about changing them anymore," Master Wong observed. "It's about sustaining it, growing it, showing others it's possible." Marcus watched as Tommy led a group of former riders through basic kata forms in the parking lot, their movements still rough but filled with genuine effort. "That's the real power of transformation," he said. "Once people see it's possible, they want to become part of it." The cafe had become more than just a coffee shop. It was now a symbol of the change sweeping through campus. Students and former riders sat together sharing stories and plans. The atmosphere crackled with the energy of possibility, of barriers breaking down and new connections forming. "You know what's really amazing?" Sarah asked, watching a leather-clad former writer carefully explain the cafe's new loyalty program to a freshman. "They're not just stopping the bad things they used to do. They're actively looking for ways to help. It's like once they remembered what real strength feels like, they can't get enough of it." Outside, the morning sun illuminated a campus transformed. Fear had given way to something new, not just peace, but active cooperation. The transformation that had begun with one student's stand against intimidation was evolving into something none of them could have predicted. And in his usual spot by the window, Marcus Chen watched it all unfold, knowing that the real work of change was just beginning. The path from fear to strength was being paved, one choice at a time. The ripple effects of the transformation at Riverside Heights began spreading far beyond campus borders. What had started as a stand against intimidation in a coffee shop had evolved into a movement that was catching the attention of universities and communities across the state. Marcus sat in the converted student union, now officially renamed the Campus Community Center, reviewing reports from various departments. The changes were both subtle and profound. Attendance was up, reported incidents of intimidation had dropped to near zero, and student satisfaction surveys showed a marked improvement in feelings of safety and community. "Got something you need to see," Tommy announced, entering with a stack of letters. "Remember those other campuses dealing with bike gangs? 3 of them have started their own transformation programs based on our model." Master Wong, who had been coordinating with other martial arts schools, added his own update. 6 dojos in the valley have adopted our integrated community protection approach, former gang members training alongside law enforcement, creating bridges no one thought possible. Through the large windows, they could see Mike, the Snake Davidson, leading a self-defense workshop for a group of international students. His teaching style combined the intensity of his former life with the discipline of martial arts, creating something uniquely effective. The medical center reports a 70% drop in intimidation-related incidents, Emily shared, reviewing her clinic data. But here's what's really interesting. Former shadow riders are now volunteering as patient escorts. They're using their presence to make people feel safer rather than afraid. Jennifer Lin, now running an expanded martial arts program, brought her own observations. "It's not just about self-defense anymore. We're seeing former rivals training together, sharing techniques, building connections that go beyond style or background." Officer Jackson entered with news from the campus police department. "Got requests from 3 other university security teams. They want to implement our reformed Rider Patrol program. Can't argue with the results. Campus crime rates are at a 10-year low." The community center had become a hub of constant activity. Former shadow riders now wearing campus guardian patches coordinated with student organizations to create comprehensive safety networks. Study groups met without fear, even late at night, knowing they had dedicated protectors. "Check this out," Tommy said, pulling up social media feeds. "Our transformation story hit national education forums. Other schools dealing with gang issues are reaching out, wanting to learn how to turn intimidation into protection." Sarah, who had expanded the Silver Bean Café into a community gathering space, shared her own perspective. "You know what's really amazing? The conversations I hear now. Students and former riders discussing philosophy, sharing experiences. Real connections being built over coffee and understanding." Marcus watched as a group of former riders, led by Mike, demonstrated motorcycle safety techniques to an eager crowd of students. The skills they'd once used to intimidate were now being shared as knowledge, turning fear into fascination. "Got word from State University," Officer Jackson announced. "Their bike gang problem was worse than ours. After seeing our success, they're implementing similar changes, already having positive results." The impact wasn't limited to campus life. Local businesses that had once paid protection money were now partnering with reformed riders for legitimate security services. The community's perception was shifting from fear to appreciation. "Here's something interesting," Emily noted, reviewing new enrollment data. "Applications are up 20%. Word's getting out. Riverside Heights isn't just safe. It's becoming a model for positive change." Through the windows, they could see more evidence of transformation. Former Shadow Riders now wore their leather vests alongside academic accomplishments, their dedication to protection earning them real respect. Study groups met in the open, martial arts classes spilled onto the lawn, and the atmosphere crackled with positive energy. "You know what's really powerful?" Jennifer observed. "The way different groups are mixing now. Athletes training with martial artists, former riders mentoring freshmen, security teams including reformed gang members. The barriers are just dissolving." The afternoon sun illuminated a campus that had become something unprecedented, a place where strength was measured not by the fear one could inspire, but by the positive change one could create. The transformation that had begun with Marcus's stand was now self-sustaining, growing beyond any individual's influence. "Got something else to show you?" Tommy said, leading them to the parking lot. The former Shadow Riders' garage had been completely transformed. Where once there had been a headquarters of intimidation, now stood a community center combining motorcycle maintenance workshops with martial arts training and academic tutoring. "This is what real change looks like," Marcus observed, watching students and former riders work together on projects. Not just stopping negative behaviors, but creating new positive ones, building something that makes the old way obsolete. The ripples continued to spread, touching lives and transforming communities far beyond Riverside Heights. What had started as a response to intimidation had become a blueprint for positive change, proving that true strength lay not in the ability to create fear, but in the power to inspire transformation. And in the midst of it all, Marcus Chen watched with quiet satisfaction, knowing that each person touched by this change would become a seed for further transformation, spreading the message that real power comes not from intimidation, but from the courage to protect and serve others. The evening shadows lengthened across Riverside Heights as reports began filtering in through various channels. Razor had been busy, gathering hardline members from bike gangs across 3 states. Their target wasn't just the campus anymore, but everything the transformation represented. "They're mobilizing," Officer Jackson reported, spreading intel photos across the command center table. "Looking at over 70 riders, all hardcore elements. They're calling us traitors to biker culture." Marcus studied the photos with tactical precision, his eyes noting details others might miss. "How many of these men have martial arts backgrounds?" "At least 20, Master Wong confirmed, reviewing profiles. "Some with significant competitive experience. They're saying we've gone soft, betrayed the true meaning of strength." Tommy burst into the command center, his face flushed with urgency. "Just got word from my old contacts. Razor's not just gathering numbers, he's building something new, calling it the True Power Brotherhood. They're targeting everything we've built." Emily entered with reports from the campus clinic. 3 incidents already. They're disrupting our medical transport services, trying to intimidate students away from using our escort programs. 2 of our volunteers were threatened. Marcus absorbed the information with characteristic calm, his mind already formulating responses. "They're not just fighting us, they're fighting what we represent. The idea that true strength can exist without fear." Through the windows, they could see the campus community continuing its daily routines. Former Shadow Riders, now campus guardians, maintained their protective presence. Students moved freely, their fear replaced by confidence. But there was an undercurrent of tension, a knowledge that this peace would soon be tested. "Got more," Officer Jackson added, checking his phone. "They're spreading rumors in other schools trying to prevent our model from being adopted, saying we've betrayed traditional biker values." Mike, the snake. Davidson, who had become one of their strongest advocates for change, shared his perspective. "Razor's not just angry, he's scared. What we're building here threatens everything he believes about power and respect." The command center hummed with activity as they prepared for the coming challenge. But unlike before, their preparations weren't focused on confrontation. Marcus had something else in mind. "Jennifer," he addressed his senior student, "how many lives have we touched since this started?" Jennifer consulted their records. Over 300 students directly impacted by our protection programs, another 500 through our community outreach, 15 former gang members now working as peer counselors. Tommy, your garage transformation program? 28 former riders trained in legitimate security work, another 40 learning martial arts. We're actually helping people now, not just intimidating them. Marcus nodded, pieces of his strategy falling into place. That's our weapon. Not fists or threats, but proof. Every life we've changed, every student we've protected, every person who's found a better path, that's how we fight back. The radio crackled with updates as reports of Razor's activities continued to come in. But with each report of their opposition came stories of transformation. More students standing up to intimidation, more riders choosing to change, more evidence that their approach was working. Visual confirmation, Officer Jackson announced. They're gathering at the old industrial park. But something's different. They're making it public, wanting everyone to see their strength. Because this isn't just about victory for them, Marcus observed. It's about proving their way is the only way. Time to show them another path. Emily reviewed medical records that told a deeper story. Look at these numbers. Emergency room visits from violence down 60%. Student anxiety reports decreased by half. We're not just stopping violence, we're creating peace. Outside, the evening had settled into a tense calm. Campus guardians maintained their posts, their presence now a source of comfort rather than fear. Students continued their activities, refusing to be driven back into shadows. Something else you should see, Tommy said, pulling up social media feeds. Remember those riders who were on the fence? They're watching what we're doing, seeing the respect we're earning, starting to question Razor's way. Marcus stood at the window watching his transformed campus with pride. Every person has to choose, he said quietly. Fight for something bigger than yourself, or lose your way fighting for pride alone. Razor's about to help us prove which path leads to real strength. The command center continued its preparations, but these weren't preparations for battle. They were demonstrations of transformation, proof that another way was possible. As night fell over Riverside Heights, both sides prepared for a confrontation that would test not their fighting skills, but their understanding of true strength. And in the growing darkness, Marcus Chen watched over it all, knowing that the real victory wouldn't be won with fists or force, but with the power of transformed lives and the undeniable evidence that real strength comes from protecting, not destroying. In the bustling activity of early morning, the newly transformed campus community center buzzed with unprecedented energy. What had started as a simple stand against intimidation had evolved into something far more profound. Marcus sat at his usual spot, now surrounded by a mix of students, former riders, and community members, all united in a common purpose. Final numbers are in, Emily announced, spreading reports across the table. Campus security incidents down 87%, student attendance up 30%, community engagement at record levels. What we've built here, it's changing everything. Through the windows, the morning sun illuminated a transformed campus. Former shadow riders, now wearing their guardian patches with pride, escorted students between classes. The same presence that had once inspired fear now brought comfort and security. Got something else to show you, Tommy said, leading Marcus to the renovated garage. Where once there had been a headquarters of intimidation, now stood a thriving community hub. Former gang members taught motorcycle maintenance alongside martial arts classes. Study groups gathered in converted spaces, the rumble of bikes mixing with academic discussions. Look at this, Mike, the Snake Davidson pointed to a wall covered in photographs. Each image told a story of transformation. Former rivals training together, riders helping students, community service projects in action. Used to think respect came from fear. Never knew it could feel like this. Master Wong, observing a mixed class of martial artists and reformed riders, shared his perspective. In 40 years of teaching, I've never seen anything quite like this. They're not just learning techniques, they're discovering who they were meant to be. The impact extended far beyond campus borders. Local businesses that had once lived in fear now partnered with guardian patrols. Community events flourished under their protection. The very presence that had once emptied streets now drew people together. "Check these out," Jennifer Lynn said, displaying a series of testimonials. Students, faculty, and community members all sharing stories of change. Tales of former intimidators becoming protectors, of fear transformed into trust, of a community rediscovering its strength. Officer Jackson approached with his own update. "Just got word from the State Board of Education. They're implementing our program as a model for campus security across the system. What started here is spreading." Sarah, who had expanded the Silver Bean Café into a community gathering space, watched as former rivals shared coffee and conversation. "Sometimes I have to remind myself how it used to be. The fear, the tension. Now look at them. Really look at them. They found something better than power. They found purpose." Marcus moved through the center, noting the subtle but profound changes. Students who had once hurried through campus now walked with confidence. Former gang members who had demanded respect through fear now earned it through service. The transformation was evident in every interaction, every shared smile, every moment of genuine connection. "Got the latest from our outreach program," Emily reported. 15 more campuses have adopted our model. The ripple effect is incredible. Each success story becomes inspiration for another community to change. Through the windows, they could see more evidence of their impact. New riders arriving, not to cause trouble but to learn. Former enemies working together on community projects. The very culture of the campus had shifted from survival to growth, from isolation to connection. "You know what's really amazing?" Tommy observed, watching a group of former riders mentor freshman students. "It's not just about stopping the bad stuff. They're actively looking for ways to help, to contribute, like they've discovered something they didn't even know they were missing." The afternoon brought more visitors, educators, law enforcement officials, community leaders, all eager to understand how such a profound transformation had been achieved. But Marcus knew the truth. It wasn't about programs or policies. It was about showing people a better way to be strong. "Final numbers from the scholarship program," Jennifer announced. 30 former gang members now enrolled in classes, another 50 in vocational training. They're not just changing their behavior, they're changing their futures. As the day progressed, the evidence of transformation continued to mount. Security reports showed not just a reduction in incidents, but an increase in positive interventions. Community feedback reflected not just relief from fear, but genuine appreciation for their protectors. "Got something else," Mike said, pulling up social media feeds. The hashtag #GuardianStrength was trending, filled with stories of lives touched and changed by their movement. Each post a testament to the power of choosing protection over intimidation. Marcus watched it all with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the real victory wasn't in the numbers or the accolades. It was in the transformation he saw in their eyes, the pride of purpose replacing the hollow satisfaction of fear. The true strength they had discovered wasn't in their ability to intimidate, but in their power to protect and serve. The sun began its descent over Riverside Heights, casting long shadows across a campus forever changed. What had begun as one person's stand against intimidation had grown into a movement, a model, a testament to the possibility of transformation. And in the heart of it all, Marcus Chen knew that this was just the beginning, that each transformed life would become a seed for further change, spreading the message that real power comes not from creating fear, but from having the courage to protect others. As the winter sun cast its golden light across Riverside Heights, Marcus sat at his usual spot in the Silver Bean Café, watching students and former riders mingle freely in what had become the heart of their transformed community. The sight reminded him of his first tournament victory, not because of the win, but because of what his sensei had told him afterward. True victory isn't in defeating others, but in helping them find their own strength. "Hard to believe it's been 3 months, Sarah remarked, bringing his usual coffee. Where once she had trembled at the sight of leather vests, she now moved confidently among the mixed crowd of students, martial artists, and reformed riders. "Got the latest impact report," Emily said, joining them with a thick folder. "We've expanded to 27 campuses now, each one adapting our model to their needs. but all built on the same principle: transformation through protection rather than intimidation. Through the windows, they could see Mike the Snake Davidson leading a mixed group through morning exercises. Former gang members trained alongside students, their movements blending martial arts discipline with street-learned intensity. "Something you should see," Tommy called out, entering with his laptop. "Remember Razor's old YouTube channel? The one where he used to post intimidation videos? Look at this." He pulled up a new video. Razor, looking different, humbled somehow, speaking directly to camera. "I was wrong," Razor's recorded voice carried through the cafe. "Thought strength meant making others weak. Took losing everything to see the truth. Real power isn't about fear. It's about having the courage to change." Master Wong, watching from his usual corner, nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes the hardest opponent to defeat is our own pride. Razor's transformation might be the most powerful testimony of all." The cafe had become more than just a coffee shop. It was a living symbol of what was possible when people chose a different path. Photos lined the walls telling stories of transformation: former rivals working together, community service projects, graduation ceremonies where leather vests mixed with academic robes. Latest numbers from campus security, Officer Jackson reported, joining their growing gathering. Year-over-year comparison shows a 90% drop in intimidation incidents. But here's the real kicker: student volunteering is up 300%. They're not just feeling safer, they're becoming part of the change. Jennifer Lynn arrived with news from the expanded martial arts program. Just certified our 100th Guardian instructor, former gang members teaching alongside traditional martial artists, creating something entirely new, a blend of street wisdom and ancient discipline. The morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating a scene that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Students studied openly, their books spread across tables, while leather-clad guardians maintained a protective but unobtrusive presence. "You know what the real miracle is?" Sarah observed, watching a former shadow rider help a freshman with calculus homework. "It's not just that they stopped doing harm. They've discovered the joy of doing good. You can see it in their eyes." Marcus nodded, remembering his own journey. That's the true power of transformation. Once you experience the strength that comes from protecting others, going back to intimidation feels hollow. Emily shared more updates from their expanding network. 5 more campuses starting Guardian programs next month. State Education Board is calling it a revolution in campus security. But it's more than that. It's a revolution in how we understand strength. Outside, the morning campus routine unfolded with a new rhythm. Guardian patrols moved with purpose, their presence bringing comfort rather than fear. Students walked freely, engaged in animated discussions, the atmosphere electric with possibility. "Something else you should know," Tommy added, his voice carrying pride. "Remember those kids who used to skip school because they were afraid? Attendance rates are at an all-time high. They're not just coming to class, they're thriving." The cafe continued to fill as morning classes let out. Each table told a story of transformation. Study groups protected by former intimidators, martial arts students sharing techniques with reformed writers, barriers breaking down one conversation at a time. "Got word from State University," Officer Jackson mentioned. "Their Guardian program just prevented a major gang incident. Not through force, through respect. The would-be troublemakers actually joined their training program instead." As noon approached, Marcus stood by the window, watching his transformed community with quiet satisfaction. What had started as a simple stand against bullying had evolved into something far more profound, a movement that proved true strength comes not from the fear you inspire, but from the people you protect. "You know what this really means?" Master Wong asked, joining him at the window. "Every person who changes becomes living proof that transformation is possible. Each one becomes a seed for further change." Marcus smiled, watching as another group of visitors arrived, eager to learn about their model of transformation. "That's the real victory," he replied, "not in defeating our opponents, but in helping them discover their own capacity for good." The winter sun climbed higher over Riverside Heights, illuminating a campus forever changed. What had begun in confrontation had blossomed into collaboration, proving that the greatest strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to protect and serve.